Well, hello, my good and faithful friends, and happy next day after Thanksgiving to you. I hope that you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We did. Ours was a little early. Ours was actually on Sunday. We had the whole family come in. My wife fixed a huge spread, and everyone just loved it. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 pounds of turkey and about 10 pounds of ham, or 5 pounds of ham. I forget what it was now. But that all disappeared. Don't know where it went. Yeah, so we had a good time. I see lots of folks signing on here, so it looks like we're live and going. I'm going to remind everyone that this will be probably a fairly short introduction here and videos and things like that. I've got a few things to show, but that part will be fairly short, I imagine. And then we'll get into questions and answers. And I just want to remind everyone to be sure to put 2 question marks at least in front of your question so that I can find them easier. In other words, start the question with a couple of question marks. It makes it easier for me to find it as they scroll up and down the screen. In speaking of that Thanksgiving dinner, so last night I prepared the Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, I did the whole thing from start to finish. I worked like a slave in the kitchen to do it. My wife didn't help at all. And, well, probably wasn't that big a deal. It consisted of some scrambled eggs, a couple pieces of fried ham, and a few pieces of cinnamon toast. Buttery cinnamon toast. But I made the whole thing. So that was our Thanksgiving dinner between my wife and I last night. But she didn't have to do it, at least. So she was pretty thankful. That's about the extent of my cooking, trust me. If I can fry an egg or make a bologna sandwich, I'm good, That's pretty much it. So then after the shop talk today, my next line of chores is to clean out the ashes out of the wood furnace. And other people, they use a 5-gallon bucket and have room left over. I use a bucket also, but mine is the skid steer bucket on the front of my Bobcat, and I barely have enough room even with that large bucket. And it's a big bucket. Yeah, it's a little different scale of cleaning out ashes over here. So that's my next job after this. By the way, I have my little heater on under the table here. If that is making a noise in the camera or something and it's annoying you, please let me know. I can turn it off. I'll just freeze, but that's okay. I can freeze. I mentioned. Well, let me back up here and say that I also want to mention my son's channel again. JR's my son, and JR has a new homestead horsemanship, and there's a link in the description of this video. So please check that out and subscribe for him and help him get going. It won't cost you anything, and it doesn't hurt you at all to subscribe to his channel. So just click over there and click subscribe and help him out. I would really appreciate it. Can hardly hear the heater, he says. Well, that's good. My daughter, she's the one that always, daughter Rochelle, that is, she's the one that's always giving me these crazy t-shirts. And here's my next crazy t-shirt. Lettuce, the taste of sadness. Now, had I known she was designing this shirt, I would have actually changed the slogan a little bit. I mean, this is nice. Lettuce, the taste of sadness. I would have said lettuce, the taste of wasted compost, because lettuce makes great compost to grow potatoes in. Yeah, it would just be the wasted compost would be my slogan. But I appreciate her little bit of humor there. As you know, I don't eat vegetables. I mean, I don't eat any vegetables. I mean, people think, yeah, right, sure. No, I'm serious. I don't eat any vegetables. And you're thinking, how could you possibly get through life without eating any vegetables? Well, sorry, I don't. I never have, never will. I mean, some people say, well, you eat corn, you eat rice, you eat potatoes. I do. And I'll occasionally eat carrots. But when you think about it, especially those first three, those are just starches. They're not your typical vegetable. So, yeah, there's that. But anyway, so that's where the t-shirt came from. Anyway, my other daughter, Lisa, has gotten into making designer cups. And she made this for me. You can see my logo on there, and it looks like wood. Now, it's an aluminum lined cup on the inside. It keeps your beverage really cold. And but it's got my nice logo on there. She did a beautiful job on that. And so I'm using it this morning. Oops, I turned it around this way so that you guys could see the logo. Drinking down my caffeine in a can. Except my caffeine makes me sleepy, so if I fall asleep on you, don't worry about it. It's just the caffeine. Let's see. Rick Ward sent me a gift also. You know, I made a mention that I wish they made the this 3M kind of sandpaper. The kind that's got the no slip grip. You know, lasts longer. All this stuff doesn't build up. I said I wish they made that in a 600, and Rick said that he got turned on to this particular sandpaper, which is, and I haven't really tested it out yet. It's Dura Gold is what it's called, Dura Gold, and this is 1500 that he sent to me. So Rick, thank you very much for sending me this. I only tested a small piece so far, and of course that's 1500. That's a little bit too fine for sanding raw wood. So I'm going to see if they make that in a 600, but I did take the 1500 on here and on this and just sanded this raw wood, and it did not seem to build up, but it's hard to tell with 1500. That's pretty fine. But I'm going to try to see if they've got that in 600 and get me some of that. Pretty cool stuff. So I'll let you know if that if I in a future video, if it works really well or something, you'll see it and I'll tell you about it. I believe in passing along anything that I find that really works well. Let's see here. So I've talked about all that good stuff, and one more thing. While Rochelle was here from Ohio, my daughter, they got into making these things. And you might think, what in the world is that? Well, it's just kind of a live edge type, get ready for the word, here it comes, charcuterie board. Charcuterie board. Yeah, that's another word that I had never heard in my life, I don't think. And of course, Yuppie Caleb over there, he goes, yeah, that's a, cheese board or something like that for, charcuterie. It's just something these dang yuppies came up with just to confuse us old guys. Charcuterie. Well, anyway, you can see that. This is just rough walnut that I sawed right here on the farm with my sawmill. And my daughter, the one that she made, they were much longer. She made them longer. I don't know why. This seems awfully big to me. But apparently, she must do more entertaining and need bigger cheese trays and things. I think it's for cheese crackers and miscellaneous junk that you sit on there, and this little cutout right here is for one of those bowls of stuff that I wouldn't touch, with my crazy taste bud. Yeah, they put out all these dips and, onion dips and all this junk, and they put out these dry chips. I just eat the dry chips. I don't eat the all that dips and stuff doesn't go down these pipes. Anyway, I just thought you'd like to see that. It's kind of cool. They look really nice, and I really like my cup. Cool. Let's see. I've got a short little bit of footage here on it's been deer season up through this past Tuesday, and here's a little bit of footage from the condo I thought you might get a kick out of seeing. I'm hoping you can hear me there. That's you know, just kind of a small, medium-sized buck. I mean, he would have been a legal shooter because he's got 4 on one side, but I'm looking for his great-grandpa. So I just took video of him and let him pass. And I was watching him there and let my phone camera drop. I wasn't paying attention. And I get him back in view here in just a second. There he is. But you can see, that would have been a slam dunk shot, no problem at all. Could have got him. I actually saw 3 big boys. So I actually did see 3 really big bucks. And one of them, well, actually 2 of them, I definitely could have shot. One was after dark, so it's a no-brainer. It's not legal. But that was adding insult to injury, because that was the last evening of the deer season. I shot a real small deer just for meat in the freezer. And I thought it was a doe. Turned out it was a button buck, but it was a large button buck, so still a small deer though. But anyway, I put that in the freezer. So then I was driving back to the back to get rid of the waste product from that. And, you know, because the vultures and the coyotes and all that stuff eat all that stuff. So I don't throw it in the trash. I just lay it out in the field back there, and the animals go crazy for it, you know. Well, anyway, as I was driving back there, now keep in mind this was in the dark, right after I shot this other little bitty deer, Mr. Gigantic buck. I mean, really big, wide, 2-foot wide type rack, about, you know, 18 inches high, possibly. Anyway, at least a foot high. Just takes off running right in front of me, right in front of me, right in my headlights. Like, oh my gosh. After sitting out there all that time and I didn't see that kind of buck. So I definitely would have shot him had he been out there in the open during the season, but he didn't give me that opportunity. And then I did have 2 other opportunities that I actually could have probably shot. One of them walked right across the field mid-morning, and I definitely could have shot him. Actually, there was 3 other opportunities now that I think about it. But he was a big buck, but he wasn't quite as big as what I have on the wall, I don't think, and so I decided to pass on him. He was quite a bit bigger than the one I just showed you. Then there was another one, real early in the morning, just barely daylight good, and I saw a deer walking away from me. I pull up my binoculars instead of my rifle with the scope, and he was a nice, wide, tall buck, too. And so I reached, grabbed the rifle, pull it up, and he just went over the hill just at that instant, and I didn't get a shot at him. And then there was one more, and I was driving back from my sit one evening, and I came back early because it was Sunday evening, and that was the evening we were going to have our Thanksgiving dinner. So I came back early. It was still legal shooting time, but I was sitting in my new Kawasaki Mule, and a buck jumps up right off the trail, runs about 30 yards away, and just looks at me. And he was a big boy. I would have shot him too, except that the ethical part of that wouldn't let me because it's not legal to shoot from a vehicle. And yeah, I just decided to let him go because it just, you know, nobody would have ever known, you know, that I shot it that way, but I would have, so I just didn't do it. So I try to be ethical and legal and all that when I do my hunting. So some people don't like the hunting at all, but you know, it's there for a reason. It's not a bad thing. It's just a different way of life. Anyway, I'm not bloodthirsty. I don't shoot everything that moves, you know. We eat and we consume what we shoot. So to me, it's food. And especially for me, because I'm the closest thing to a carnivore that ever walked the earth, in human form anyway. Let's see. The last little bit here before we get into the questions. Well, first of all, I guess I just wanted to mention on the last Hurrah guitar, you know, thank you for all the nice compliments and everything on the videos. And hopefully you saw the the last video where we were all taking turns playing the guitar. Now, most of that was shot just before I finished it. And then the very last clip of that was the owner playing it and singing. So, and that was, of course, after he picked it up. The status of the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human has not changed at all. I haven't been able to work on it. I've just been, well, mostly busy with deer season because I just wanted to take some time off. So hopefully this coming week I'll be making some progress on that. And again, in case anybody thinks I'm being conceited, calling it the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human, that's just my goal. You know, it's you got to aim high, and that's what I'm aiming to do, is to build that kind of a mandolin. Let's see. All right, so I'll remind you once again, if you're going to ask questions, be sure to start your questions with a couple of question marks, but don't post them yet because we're not quite ready yet. Here we go with things I know. Now, I just wrote these down this morning. I didn't give it a ton of thought, but these are things I absolutely know for black and white certainty. Feel free to disagree with me, and you can be wrong all you want, because if you're disagreeing with these things, you're wrong. Just that simple. The most critical part of a guitar, or really pretty much any instrument, is the bridge and the bridge plate. And for guitars specifically, the bridge plate. The bridge and the bridge plate, that's absolutely the most critical place on the instrument. Why some guitar makers like, well, I'm not even going to mention any particular guitar makers because I don't really want to single out anybody. But why some of them decided they could put the cheapest woods in those places, it just boggles the mind. I mean, that's where all your tension is, that's where all your sound is, that's where your strength needs to be. That area of your build, if you're building an instrument for the first time in your life, that's the place where you don't want to skimp on anything. The bridge and the bridge plate is the most critical part of your instrument, especially if you're building a guitar. That's the place that fails the most often. Yeah. So be sure that you understand that that's the critical place. That's not the place to put in the piece of plywood or a piece of crummy wood, because it affects your sound, it affects the strength. Put in good stuff there, put in quarter sawn stuff there, because quarter sawn is actually stiffer than slab sawn wood. Like for instance on your bridge plate, don't use a piece of slab sawn wood on your bridge plate because it'll bow and cup, just like wood always bows and cups. But if you quarter saw it, it won't bow and cup. So a very critical spot. That's something I know for black and white certainty. If you disagree with that, you're just wrong, period. Intonation is the most critical part of setup. And you've heard me say that before. It is. It's just the most critical part of setup. If the intonation is not right, in other words, from the nut to the saddle, the length of that has to be exactly right for your fret scale. And that's why you always see me do it the long, hard, tedious way of hooking up the strings to the tail pin, running them over the bridge, floating the bridge around, or floating the saddle, or both, depending on what I'm doing. But I always float them around until I get the intonation perfect. Once I get the intonation perfect, I mark it and put it right there. Yeah, you can measure all day long and stick it there and you'll be close, but you won't be perfect. When you get it perfect, it sounds perfect. It just changes everything. And I've told the story several times how that one fellow up there in I knew the name of this town the other day and I can't think of it again. But anyway, we're at a jam and this guy asked me to fix his mandolin and set the intonation. Well, he said it just never did play right. So as soon as I picked it up, I could tell the intonation was off. I moved the intonation. Tears came in the man's eyes. He started crying because he had owned that mandolin for all those years and the intonation was never right. As soon as I got the intonation right, the mandolin just sounded like a mandolin instead of dissonant, sounds. So intonation's the most critical thing. It really is. If it's not right, nothing can be right. Now, having said that, fret leveling is the most important part of setup. Now, wait a minute. I just said intonation was the most important part of setup. Well, they're both pretty equally important, but your intonation truly is the most important part of that. Your fret leveling, they all have to be level within 1/1000th of an inch. I mean, if you don't believe that, press your string down, say at the 5th fret. I don't care what fret you pick, just pick a fret. Press your string down, look how much clearance is at the next fret, because it has to clear the fret behind that. Going back to your saddle, it has to clear that next fret back in order to play. If it doesn't clear, it's going to buzz. That's why those frets have to be so perfectly level. If you look down your fretboard and you can see, a hump or a high spot or something, you got a problem, and it needs to be just as flat as a pancake. People talk about this, relief. I'm not big on relief. I like very minimal relief. Relief actually can create a buzzing problem if you do too much relief. So anyway, so the most important thing for sure is intonation. The second most important thing, I guess, would be your fret leveling. They've got to be right. You can disagree again if you want to, but you're just wrong. Tapping on wood, we talked about that in the last section. Any wood that you're going to use in the box of your instrument, the body of your instrument, the box part, that has to be good quality tone type wood. So you need to learn how to tap on your wood, and you need to make sure that you can hear a note in that wood. If that wood has a sustain and a note, it'll be a good wood for building your instrument. So the thing I know about that then is that if an instrument if a piece of wood makes a note like this in rough form, then when you get it in the instrument and tap on it, it will, or when you make the part for the instrument and you tap on it, it'll even sound better. That's what I know for sure, and you should be able to hear that as you're carving that wood and getting it closer to the shape you want. You should be able to hear that note get clearer, louder, more precise, and by the way you carve it, you can change that note a little bit and go up or down with the note, and you try to land on a note that is not an open string. The next thing I know is sharp tools are an absolute must. Learn how to sharpen, and then I added the word quickly. I see these guys out on the internet all the time sharpening, and it takes them hours, and they're proud of the fact that they spent an hour and a half sharpening this. If you can't sharpen it and get it razor sharp where it'll shave hair in 5 minutes or less, you're doing something wrong. Period, black and white, you're just doing it wrong. I don't care who you are, what you think you know. If you can't sharpen your tool in 5 minutes or less and get it razor sharp where it'll just shave hair, you're just doing it wrong. Period. End of discussion, you're wrong. These are things I know. I mean, I can take something as blunt as the edge of this table and have it razor sharp in 5 minutes or less. I mean, all you do, you may have to start with a grinder, but you start with what you got to start with, and in 5 minutes or less, you can have it shaving. And that includes an axe, or that includes, a knife or a chisel or anything. You need to learn how to do it, and you need to learn how to do it quickly, because if you're spending hours and hours on an arduous task, who's going to look forward to sharpen their chisel if it takes them an hour and a half to sharpen their chisel? I can sharpen my chisel in like a minute and be right back to work, and it's perfectly sharp. So you need to learn how to do it quickly. Quick is just as important almost as sharp, in my opinion, because it becomes a laborious task if it's not quick. It doesn't have to be a laborious task. Having the right tool for the job is something I know is absolutely critical. If you don't have the right tool, either get it or make it. Now, the caveat there is that often people think they need a specific kind of tool. It's kind of like the excavator, I can't say the right word, the thing that digs with a bucket, you know. You see these track hoes, everybody's got one of those in a video these days if you watch these kinds of videos, and everybody thinks that's their best tool in the world. I wouldn't take 5 track hoes and backhoes like that for my one skid steer. That one skid steer, I can outwork those people 7 days to Sunday. Yeah, I see them doing things like they're reaching out because it's so fun to use the joysticks and pick up this stick and move it over here. Baloney. Use the right tool for the job. It applies to anything in life, but it really applies to building instruments. If you need a chisel, get a chisel. If you need a finger plane, get a finger plane. If you need a bandsaw, get a bandsaw. But you need the right tool for the job. Don't just think that you say need a jointer if you don't. I'm trying to save you some money. Some people think they see me with a jointer and they think they got to have one. You can do the same thing with a block plane and do it pretty well. They did it for hundreds and hundreds of years. You don't have to have a jointer. I like the jointer because it's fast, it's easy for me. The hand plane's fine. If I really had to do it, I could use a hand plane. The point is, it needs to be the right tool for the job, and a hand plane can be the right tool. So my point is, you don't have to have the most expensive tool in the world, but it needs to be the right tool for the job. So be very careful about that. If you're spending way too much time doing something and it seems to be arduous, stop what you're doing, think about it, and go, yeah, there's an easier way to do this, and get the right tool and do the job the right way and make it easier on yourself. This is something that I absolutely know for sure, black and white. Again, if you disagree with this, you are wrong. Sneaking up on it is far better than trying to get there in one step. In other words, if you're cutting something out and it's critical and you try to cut it perfectly the first time, you're making a mistake. Cut it big, always cut it big, and sneak up on it. Take just the least little tiny bit off with a chisel or whatever and sneak up on it. Always sneak up on it. Don't try to cut it perfect the very first time. You'll see why once you do this kind of work very much. But sneaking up on it is the right approach always. In almost anything you do on an instrument. Here's another thing I know. And now this is going to sound a little bit kind of like a buzzword type situation where it's just the cool thing to say. No, this is not the cool thing to say. This is black and white. This is something I black and white know. Building the instrument is easy. Building the instrument is easy. Detailing the instrument is really hard. And it sounds so easy to say that, and it's like I said, it's kind of like the buzzword, and it's kind of like one of those things where luthiers are saying this to sound cool. No, this is black and white fact. Building the instrument is actually easy. Detailing the instrument, finishing it, putting the binding on and all the inlay, that's the hard stuff. Way harder than building it. Building it is a piece of cake. I wish I could take this challenge on, because I only thought of it today. A year ago, before my hands got so bad, I would have taken this challenge on just like that. I can't even snap my fingers anymore. I would have just taken the challenge, and that would be to build an acoustic guitar in one day. I can build, I know you probably think I'm nuts. I seriously could build the whole acoustic guitar in one day. And you're thinking, there ain't no way. Now, I didn't say detail it. I said build it. I could build an acoustic guitar in one long day. Now, it'd be a long day, but I could do it. Um, Now, don't get me wrong, the stars would have to align. You know, I couldn't have a million different problems if something was breaking, you know, like my machinery or something. But I mean, if it was everything went well, I could easily build one in one day. I built my very first guitar, I built in 1 week. I was on vacation and I had the finish on it in 1 week. So I know with all the experience I have now, I could physically build an acoustic guitar in 1 day. And you think, well, why does it take you so long? Well, I'm really picky, number one. But, you know, I got a million other things to do too. The point of that, of telling you that is, and I would love to take that challenge on, don't even ask because I'm not going to with these hands these days. But the point of telling you that is to show you that that part's the easy part. Detailing it, I couldn't do that in a week. I mean, you know, because there's so much detail to it. Building it's pretty simple, you know. You know, especially with a guitar, because everything's flat and straight pretty much. You know, it don't take all the machinery you got in your shop will make things flat and straight. Now, you'd have to bend the sides. That might take me an hour, 2 hours to bend the sides, you know. You know, the glue, of course, the drying time would be one of the constraints to it. But the way the glues dry these days, I could still get the thing built in 1 day. I could not detail it in 1 day. Not a chance in this world. It'd take me a full week to detail it. That's just to try to illustrate what I'm telling you there is the truth. Building it is simple. Detailing it is difficult. Musicians, and this is my last thing that I know, and I've said this a million times, musicians are the pickiest people on the planet, bar none. I'm ready for your questions. I hope that didn't sound too cocky. I wasn't trying to be cocky. I'm trying to explain to you these are things that are black and white. You may not have you may have thought of most of those things, but maybe you didn't think of them in the light that I was trying to explain there. Those are black and white issues. Sharpening tools, man, that's one of the biggies. I mean, you got to have sharp tools, and you got to know how to do it quickly. If you're spending more than 5 minutes, you're not doing it right, because it doesn't take that long to sharpen a tool. Okay, I've seen gazillions of questions scrolling up the screen, so I'm going to back up here quite a ways and see if I can find the first one. I don't know if this is the first one or not, but it looks like it. Jeff Camp, what's the best angle for guitar strings over a bridge saddle? Well, Jeff Camp, yeah, I don't know. That's the truthful answer. I don't know what the best angle is. Here's my real life example, because see, you have to understand where I'm coming from, Jeff, is I see everything, anything and everything come through this shop. The best angle is an angle. The worst angle is no angle, where it's flat. You know, the more you can get, and everything can be, everything can have a point of diminishing return. So everything. So some angle between, flat, about right here to about right here would be good. You want to have enough angle to push down on your saddle. That's for sure. I don't have a specific angle, and there, I don't even know that you could have a specific angle, because everything on every instrument seems to be a little different, and you just kind of have to go with that particular instrument. And for the most part, more is better up to an extreme. Where like if you went straight down, you're not doing yourself any favors that way. At some point, everything starts to implode on itself. So, about a 45-degree angle would probably be about the steepest you would want, and flat is definitely not good. So Jeff, I'm sorry, I can't give you a specific number. Everything is specific to that instrument. The happy knot, okay? When opening a fiddle, is it obvious for a violin maker to know if the graduations are wrong? Could you explain proper graduation patterns? No, I don't know that I could, to be honest. Yeah, I'm just being honest with you guys. I could blow smoke all day and come up with all kinds of crud. What I notice, I notice by the sound of the instrument when I'm playing it, if it's vibrating or not, and then I notice the thickness. The actual graduations, if you ask 1,000 people, you'll probably get 1,000 answers. And I'm talking about people that all these people that think they know everything about building and graduating instruments. Almost every one of them will give you some different take on it. My thought is it's got to be thin enough to vibrate, strong enough to hold up to the thing. And that's really the bottom line. It's kind of like that angle thing again. It's kind of unique to that instrument. And you kind of know it when you get there. Mostly, you can't tell as well when the instrument's glued together. Like if you just take the back off, it'd be really hard to tell if that top is graduated perfectly, because picking up and tapping on it doesn't work very well when it's still glued to the sides and all that. But when it's loose like this, you can kind of tell. It'll either vibrate or it won't, and it'll sustain or it won't, and it'll have a clear note or it won't. And so I don't have a way to give you an exact way to graduate it. I will just tell you some general things. It's generally slightly thicker down the middle of the instrument. Then it thins down to what they call a sweet spot, and it gets real thin, and then it comes back up slightly thicker again. That's the best I can tell you, and for the most part, that's about all there is to it, really. Like I said, you talk to other people and they're going to give you all kinds of scientific, explanations and stuff, and most of that, in my opinion, is hooey. You got to tailor everything to the thing you're building and the thing you're working on. I hope that makes sense. Steve Dimebag. Steve Dimebag. There you go. I'm just a little slow, Steve, especially in the reading department. Hey, Jerry, regarding neck resets and removing necks in guitars, have you ever looked into foam cutting heat sticks? Yeah, I've tried the dry heat thing. I'm not into it. I really do like this steaming better. I'm not good with the dry heat. Yeah, I almost think that's almost more of a gimmick, another thing to sell. Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm sure it does work, especially under certain circumstances, and I'm sure it would work with some glues better than others. I'm going to stick with my steaming them off. That works really well, and I see no problem with steaming them off. You got to be a little careful in that if you're just drenching everything with water, but we don't seem to have that problem. So yeah, I've looked into that, and we do actually have one, and we tried it, and we're not happy with it too much. So no. I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers your question, because I'm not real good at reading, and you got a long question. Looks like Steve Dimebag asked another one. Rift sawn wood for bridge plate is also good bet. Minimize the chance of strings popping, cracking on a grain line. Yeah, probably. And when you say rift sawn, you're probably talking about a slight, instead of perfectly quarter sawn, slight. I don't have any problem with quarter sawn myself. If it's a good quality piece of wood, you won't have any problem with tear out and all that. Most of the time that tear out is from some cheap piece of wood they put under there, and it's soft and like plywood and junk like that. You put a good hard piece of wood in there that's quarter sawn, it ain't going nowhere. At least not in one lifetime, Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm sticking to it. James Freestad, what did bonus mean on the truss cover? Well, bonus was Melissa's husband, Paul. Bonus is his nickname in his band. That's what the guys in the band call him. They call him Bonus. So we put that on the truss rod cover. Don't know where he got the nickname, so there you go. And that just scrolled really fast. Here we go. Have you ever built a square box guitar or mando? No, I have not. He looks like he says I have. I pretty much stick to the traditional stuff, mostly because that's what sells, and mostly because that's what people want. I consider anything outside of the traditional stuff, mostly for the most part, not everything, but most of it, I just consider them novelty type instruments, because that's usually the category they fall into. I mean, they only like, you know, like cigar box instruments, for instance. They're just novelty instruments because, you know, there's a niche for that, but it's a pretty small niche, and you know, anyway, that's just the way I look at it. Nothing against them, don't get me wrong. Please don't take it wrong. I don't have anything against them. It's just that's not what I'm into. Why break guitar strings off the front of the saddle? My Martin is off the top. Why break guitar strings off the front of saddle? My Martin is off the top. So I'm thinking what you're saying there is you're breaking your strings on the front edge of your saddle. Well, I would be curious to know what kind of saddle you're using. That would be my first thing. Wooden saddles, and I'm not saying you're using wood, but wooden saddles are notorious for breaking strings. My theory for that is they don't give. The string can't move at all on wood because it sinks down in the wood, especially the wrap strings. The wrap strings break on wood because they sink into the wood and they can't give at all, and I don't know. And the other reason I say that they break there is the wood absorbs moisture from your arm and your hand, and they rust right there and they break right there. So wood would be one reason. I don't know why yours would be breaking for sure there, Jeff, other than the way it's cut. I mean, if it's really sharp or something, or if it's got some weird something going on there on the saddle. Now, I always say that, like, I'm just exaggerating here. This is the top of the saddle here. This is the top. This is the saddle. So the angle, and this is the back of the guitar back here. The angle, and I'm exaggerating it, but the angle of the saddle should be something like this, and the string should leave at the tip edge. Now, even though I say that, I always take a file, a single cut type file, and I just rub it across there just to get rid of that very, very, very sharp edge. I don't know if that could be causing a problem. I have no idea. But yeah, I really don't know how to answer why you're breaking strings there for sure until I see it. There's no one thing that makes that happen. Wood is really bad for it, though. I will tell you that. What would you regard as a good mid-priced mandolin that would be worth handing down? Well, that's a little difficult. There's a lot of them out there, really. And mid-priced depends on who you're talking to. You know, I mean, mid-price for you might be different than mid-price for me. Mid-price for me would be something in the line of the Eastman. $1,000 is not too much to pay for a F-style mandolin. They're just more expensive instruments, and so $1,000 to $2,000 to me would be sort of a mid-price type instrument. You can get them much cheaper, and occasionally you can find a really good buy on. But I would look in the Eastman line. They seem to all be pretty good mandolins for the most part. And then there's a lot of other ones in that same price range that, on an individual basis, you can find them. I mean, I don't know. I hesitate to even say any names because as sure as I say them, somebody will say, well, those are really high priced. Well, fine. But there's a lot of them out there. But from what I've seen, in terms of mass-produced instruments and in terms of value for money, what you get for what you're paying, the Eastmans are kind of hard to beat, I think. So they're probably my top recommendation on a store-bought type instrument, mandolin that is. David L. Hi Jerry, in your experience opinion, what tone wood has given you the best warm deep tone? Mahogany seems to be general consensus from what I've read. Yeah, mahogany's very good. It's a fairly deep dark tone. You know, it's more than just one kind of wood. It's more to it than that. What gives you your tone, in my opinion, of course the wood has something to do with it, don't get me wrong, but in addition to the wood, it's how it's carved, and it's also the top boards really make a difference. In other words, you know, you're going to get a blend from your sides and your back, which are going to be your mahoganies, your rosewoods, and whatever else you decide to use. But that warmth of tone, in my opinion, a lot of it comes from your top. And I've said this before, and you've heard me say it several times, especially on recent shop talks, and that is that the other woods that are good besides spruce are western cedar and redwood. And if you were building a instrument from scratch and it's your first one, I would highly recommend getting yourself a piece of quarter sawn redwood. It's so easy to work with, and I guarantee you'll love the sound. It's a great sounding wood. You can't hardly make a bad instrument with redwood. I mean, that's how good it is. And in addition, for some reason, it's extra loud. So you get really loud, and you get just a wonderful tone, a warm tone. So, you know, for the backs and sides, I think I can get a darn good sounding instrument just about out of any back and side, really. Mahogany is certainly a good choice for backs and sides. But me personally, I like the little bit, I don't know, crisper sound, if you will, of your harder woods like your rosewoods and your padauk. And there's a lot of other hardwoods that you could use too. I think sycamore would be a very good wood, but it's just harder to deal with. It's not harder to bend or anything, it's just harder to get it to dry well, and that's why you don't find a lot of sycamore out there for sale. But I don't know, I hope that kind of addresses your question there. What? Have you tried to photo analyze your house to see where the heat runs out? Only vaguely, just mildly. You know, it's pretty well insulated. The house is. I mean, anytime, you know, you got to remember it was built back in the 30s, but now the attic is just full of blown-in insulation. Most of the walls around, especially around the ends and the back of the house, I've pretty much tore completely out and furred them out to make them 6 inches deep instead of just the standard 2x4. I've made them 6 inches deep, put in modern insulation. It's pretty well insulated, and I put in new windows around on those areas. Now the front of the house has not changed much, I'll be honest. But anytime you're trying to heat nearly 7,000 square feet of concrete slab floor and there's no thermal break, and then the next thing is, I get so many of these morons telling me, just, you know, tear up the floor and put a thermal break in. Yeah, oh, give me a break. Come here and take a look at this. This house is 144 feet long, and it's got rooms everywhere. It's got like 13 rooms. You're going to tell me I'm going to tear all that up? And yeah, sure. Good luck with that. So it just is what it is, as I say. It's kind of like these hands. There's not much that's going to fix it. But no, I haven't actually had it formally analyzed. But we did have, there's some heat things you can do. My brother brought out something, and he was looking around, and we didn't really find anything obvious. It's pretty much the floor. And you can tell that just because the floor's so darn cold. It really is cold. It's a very cold floor. But that's what makes it easy to cool in the summertime. It's like I said, in the wintertime it's a bear. In the summertime you can almost cool it for the price of cooling your car. I mean, it's just like nothing. Fabric IOCP. Got no idea on that one. I'm not even going to try. Hello, Jerry. What are your thoughts on intonation for changing between different alternate tunings on acoustics? Thank you. Well, this is just an opinion, and I know, again, if you go on a forum where all these really smart guys are going to tell you I'm completely wrong, I don't think it makes a bit of difference how you tune it. Intonation is intonation. It's set in thousandths of inches off of your nut. And yeah, there's all kinds of hocus pocus, magic, dust that people sprinkle around, and it's just a bunch of baloney. Sorry, that's just the way I feel about it. It is what it is. It's a pretty much black and white thing that people try to tell you it's not black and white, and it is. So from your nut to your saddle and all the fret spacing in between there, if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. And however you want to tune it should work. That's my opinion. You ask, and that's what I told you. Are you going to give us an update on the fire-breathing furnace this winter? Well, I mentioned I got to go clean out the ashes. So that's the first update. It's been going now for about a month, and it is just full. Now, keep in mind, when I say it's full of ashes, you really don't know how big. I mean, it's a 6-foot wide Bobcat bucket. It's 3 foot deep. It's probably close to 2 foot high, if not higher, at the backside. So it's it's cut on an angle, but it'll fill that up, and that's just in a month. Most people wouldn't have enough to fill up a 5-gallon bucket in the whole winter. So we burn a lot of wood. Trust me, you really have no idea. You've never seen anything like it. That's the truth. With infrared light. No, we have never done it with infrared light. Did you choose to use a Martin Dreadnought for your builds versus a Gibson Jumbo? Yeah, mine are all built off of a Martin type style pattern. Jesse, my buddy Jesse that I met down in Mountain View, Arkansas, says, I know you like making mandolins, but do you plan to make another guitar in the future? Jesse, I'm not going to rule it out. If I do build another one in the future, it'll be for me, and it'll be the world's finest guitar ever built by a human. Again, just a goal, just a goal. If I do build one. But I don't know that I'll get that far. Honestly, the hands are just seriously worse every day. And it's not just the pain in the hands. The knots and all this stuff are getting bigger all the time. And the knots are painful now. Like this knot here on this finger, I don't know if you can see it very good. That is actually super painful. And the knots on this thumb are just crazy painful. It's like it even hurts to touch them. So, yeah. Like they said, they saw so many bone spurs in my hands, and that's, people keep sending me all kinds of things, and I appreciate that. I just got some more CBD oil that I'm trying. I'm trying, what is it called? Boron, I think it is. Boron, I'm trying those. I'm trying all kinds of stuff. But honestly, I don't think it's going to reverse all that growth and everything that's in there. To me, it's a lost cause. You can believe what you want, and like I told you, I have no placebo gene at all, zero, none. I don't have any of that, so I can't do something and feel good about it. It either works or it doesn't work, period. That's why the meloxicam works, and if it wasn't working, I guarantee you you wouldn't even see me on camera for the last 3 years if it weren't for the meloxicam. Let's see. Let me go back down here. So Jesse, I might do that. You just never know. Uh, I really am going to try to do this mandolin. Then I'm going to try to do a dobro. And actually, after that, believe it or not, I actually think I'm going to carve a bass top. I mean, like a big, giant acoustic bass top, believe it or not, because I've got a bass that I want to put a new top on. So I might get to that. Yeah, that's a big project. So I might get to that. I've had that sitting around for 10, 15 years, probably 15 years, and I just haven't gotten to it because I've been so busy. Any rough grouse left in your area? Nope. No, Jeff, we don't have any rough grouse. We barely have a quail, and I mean like barely. Every once in a while you'll hear a quail off in the distance, and that's it. I mean, like I haven't flushed a covey of quail, and I couldn't even tell you how long. For one thing, the coyotes just decimate anything on the ground. The other main, probably bigger reason, though, is the fescue. The fescue has been sown throughout the whole Missouri area for so many years. The fescue, the ground nesting birds can't get through it. It's too thick. So that's really what's hurt them more than anything. What is your opinion on oval hold mandolins over F5s that have the F hold, I guess? Well, oval hold instruments on mandolins, oval hold mandolins, have a different sound. They have, I don't know exactly how to say it, a little more hollow sound, a little more Baroque, a little more orchestral type sound perhaps. It's not a bad sound, it's just not quite as punchy and drivey as the F style. It's hard to describe the difference, but I can tell it when I hear it. It does sound a little more hollow to me, if that makes any sense. It's like, I don't know, it'd be like more like a bigger sounding box than than the smaller, tighter F holes has a little tighter sound, a little more concise sound, where the other one's a little bit more vibraty or something. It's a pretty sound. It's good for playing waltzes, tremolos. It's good for tremolos, the ones with the oval holes. I mean, those are where they really shine, in my opinion, if you're talking about sound differences. For hard driving bluegrass style music, the F hole is definitely considered to be where it's at. But the other definitely has its place. It's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different style of music, which I'm not into, so I don't use that style. Going on here, let's see. How much time we got? We don't have too much time left. I thought we'd have more. We're just about out of time, so we'll take a couple of more questions here. Let's see. It scrolled up again. I'm sorry. I'm looking here. What percentage of the cost of the instrument is in the detail portion? You know, that could vary a lot. I'd say in general the detail is probably less expensive. I don't know. That's not true. Like on the mandolin, I mean, it depends on what you call detail. Like if you're talking about the tuning keys, that's really expensive. $600 and some for those tuning keys. Someone I saw down below asked me what my favorite kind of tuners are. Well, I'll be honest, it's hard to beat the Waverly. Those are made by Stu Mack, and yeah. They're hard to beat. They really are. They're expensive as heck, and I think they get too much for them, to be perfectly honest with you. But I don't know. I buy them, so I guess they're worth it. Let's see. I'm just trying to find some more here. Why won't the guitar stay in tune? I have adjusted the nut to lower the action. It could go down more probably. The saddle doesn't fit right either. Why won't the guitar stay in tune? Well, Staley, when something doesn't stay in tune, you know, the first thing I caution, and everybody's going to say they do this, but I sometimes wonder still, and that is tune up to the note. You never, ever, ever tune down to the note. You know, so in other words, if you tune down, you're introducing backlash in your tuning key. So if you tune past the note and you need to come down, you need to come down below the note and then tune back up to the note. And when you do that, then you've gotten rid of the backlash and you shouldn't have a problem. The only other way that things should come out of tune would be the kind of strings you're using, and you know, I'm assuming that everything else is solid on the instrument, you understand. Now, you know, if there's some other mechanical problem, loose neck, loose bridge, you know, all that being said, if everything else is solid, then the only other way it could come out of tune, in my opinion, would be the strings you're using. And, you know, a lighter string is going to lose tuning a little more often than a medium string. I mean, that's just kind of the way it is. I really don't know. That's my best guesses. It's the way you tune it and the kind of strings you're using could be contributing factors. Typically, it's not the tuning keys. It could be the tuning keys. I'm not saying it isn't, but typically it's not. People think they're the culprit, and generally they're not the culprit. The way the tuning keys are designed, they just don't slip much. People think they do, they just don't. So anyway, all right, one more question. Let's see if we can find a good one here. Lloyd asked about the percentage of the cost of the detail versus the rest of the build, and I don't know that I can give you an example on that other than you can spend what you want to spend on any part of it. I'd say they're relatively equal. You don't have as much detail in terms of the volume, in terms of the rest of the instrument. So you may spend more on the rest of the instrument, but on a percentage basis, the detail probably costs more. In other words, like your inlay products and things like that probably do cost a bit more on a percentage basis, especially if you're talking about square footage, if you're something like that. But it's hard to give you an exact answer on that. Staley explores. So I am struggling to figure out how to go about the fix. Do I need to sand the neck down to straighten the neck first? Well, you must have asked another question. Why won't the guitar stay in tune? The saddle does. Yeah, Staley, I think I'm going to have to pass on that one. I wish I could give you an answer, but I'd almost have to see it to tell you what to do there and whether or not straightening the neck. See, straightening the neck, that's another, in my opinion, it's another myth. I've done it. I've done it every way you can do it. I've put, you know, heat lamps on them, and I've pressed them back into place and done all kinds of crazy stuff. Almost none of it works. It works for maybe a little while, and then whatever force put it in that position will pull it back into that position again. So to me, whenever something is bent, bowed, out of alignment, etc. and so forth, the only way to fix it, in my opinion, and you're just asking my opinion, and that is you have to fix it mechanically. You have to do something different to fix it. You can blow the smoke all you want about humidifying and pressing and, you know, holding and clamping and etc. and so forth. And whatever force put it that way to begin with will put it back that way again. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. My favorite, John asked again, the favorite tuners, and you know, I hit on that. That was the Waverleys. They're really hard to beat. And you know quality. I mean, as soon as you put them in, as soon as you turn them, you go, wow. You just feel it. You can tell they're different. They're just smooth, clean, man. They're really hard to beat. There's probably something out there comparable, but I don't know what it is. If someone asked you to build a no-frills, plain Jane guitar, would you do it? Not at this point in time, Lloyd. I'm done building for others. And had they asked in the past, Probably, but I don't think I'd enjoy it very much. You know, part of the challenge of building them is to try to make each one a little better than the last one, you know. All right, let me just get one more question, and we're going bye-bye. And it looks like we're down to the bottom here. Mike Soba, what did he ask? Jerry, I hope you sit down with Caleb and talk about his apprenticeship before he leaves and ask him what he has learned and his future plans. Well, Mike, yeah, we've had a few discussions along those lines. He's going to open up his own shop up in the Kansas City area, and of course I wish him well. And the problem you don't understand, Mike, with Caleb is there is no discussion. The boy is, you could, you know, you know how some people, like me, I'm one of those people. You could ask me what time it is, and I'll tell you how to build a watch, you know. You're going to get more information than you want to know when you ask me something. Caleb's not like that. It's pretty much a one-way conversation when you're talking to Caleb. You might get a grunt, you might get a, yeah, okay, or something, you know, but you don't get a lot of words. He's very quiet, very, 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 very quiet. He does well on video, he talks well on video and all that, but just not so much face-to-face. So, Mike, probably that isn't going to happen, at least not in the vein that you're referring to. I appreciate the thought, though. And you all have a great day. Thank you all for tuning in here. We went over 209, so that's pretty good. We still haven't hit that 300. I wish we would get back up to 300. But thank you all so much. Same time, same place, next Friday morning. And if you think of anything you really want me to cover in depth, send me an email, rosastringworks@gmail.com. I'll see you next week.